Last week, I talked about what Shane being boring means to Ilya, how it represents Ilya's need and desire for safety, normalcy, predictability, and consistency in his life, especially when we consider his own unique situation and his immediate family's inability to provide those things for him. And in the comments, I did get a couple of requests to look at the other side of the divide because in the video, I had mentioned that when Ilya calls Shane boring, is leaving so many things unsaid whilst implying a ton as well, and that the same can be said for Shane, who refers to Ilya as being an asshole. The two of them, from the very start of the show and in the books, have always used boring and asshole as their personal terms of endearment, which also speaks to what they each appreciate about the other person and what they have. And whilst I have talked about Shane's boringness last week, I would like to address Ilya's assholery this week because you see, for Shane, Ilya Rozanov being an asshole is defiance, it's nonconformity, it's freedom, it's to be unapologetic. All traits that Ilya has in spades that Shane Hollander appreciates, is fond of, and wishes for himself. But before I get into details on that, I would like to say thank you to everyone who's patiently waited and gave comments or liked my post, my last one. For the concern and care you sent my way, thank you so much. I am feeling a bit better now. Definitely in a much better headspace than I was in last week and eager to start making content again, especially more heated rivalry videos. And don't worry, I am still working on my Women of Heated Rivalry and Why They Work videos. So do keep an eye out for that. Still on the subject of my thanks, I would like to send a big thank you to my lovely Patreons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, asshole. It's as synonymous with Shane as boring is with Ilya with regards how they address the other person. From the very first moment in episode 1 when Shane thinks Ilya is about to leave him alone in the hotel room after Shane is done sucking Ilya off, and Ilya says, "You think I'm an asshole?" And Shane responds with a slight huff, "I know you're an asshole." We have it established that asshole in that regard is something that Shane would always associate with Ilya, but not necessarily in the more negative ways that the rest of the world use it to refer to Ilya. Instead, it's about Ilya being unapologetic, defiant, nonconformist, and free. Ilya to Shane has never had to apologize for who he is or for taking up space in the world. He just does what he wants and rolls with it. Everyone else and their judgment be damned. I mean, from Shane's first introduction to Ilya within the story, Ilya straight out the bat is unapologetic, cigarette in hand, smoking right in a no smoking zone and not giving a shit, even as Shane tries to get him to follow the rules. And while Shane can be regarded as someone who does live by the rules because it helps him properly strategize and plan his life in the way in which he wants it all to go, a la him being autistic and needing that control over his life, Ilya stands as the very antithesis of that. Now, I am not saying that Shane suddenly wants to break all the rules. Clearly, his characterization isn't one that lends itself to that. He is, after all, the boring one, and Ilya loves him for that. But at the same time, we do see established within the narrative that Shane looks fondly at Ilya's unapologetic way of approaching situations. This belief that rules are meant to be broken and he absolutely refuses to apologize for doing so. It's the same unapologetic mindset that sees him setting things up so that he and Shane film the CCM commercial together by reaching out to the brand and pitching for a joint shoot. It's what sees him clocking the fact that his interest in Shane is reciprocated and he shows up to room 1410 to take what both he and Shane want. It is what has him kissing Shane on the cheek at the All Stars game in full view of everyone watching. It is what has him facing Yuna Olander straight on to confirm that yes, he is leaving the team that picked him as their first draft pick and made him captain a good, solid team to move to a less than stellar team, all for the sake of the man he loves. He does all of that with nary a smidgen of guilt because Ilya Rozanov is unapologetic about what he wants because Ilya Rozanov is an asshole. And this is a central theme in his relationship with Shane. Ilya being unapologetic means that he's the one who, through his own actions, consistently encourages Shane to reach for what he wants and to not apologize for doing so, whether it is allowing himself to follow through on a bad idea and being kissed in that hotel room, or him hooking up with Ilya again in Vegas, or them carrying through with their relationship through several years. At each point and step, Shane matches Ilya's pace in things until, of course, Ilya tips over into wanting more and Shane bolts because he can't handle that. And then his brief stint with Rose and his conversation with her, and he's again back to being unapologetic with regards his desire to get back with Ilya. I mean, say what you will, but I do think Shane showing up at Vegas post breakup with Rose after he raced out of Ilya's room the last time they were together to sidle up against Ilya and just run with it to get his man back, he was channeling that bit of unapologetic Ilya Rozanov energy right there. And before you say, no, your girl, he did apologize. I know. When I say that Ilya's unapologetic and Shane was channeling him in that moment, you know I'm referring to Ilya's I want this and I'm going to go for it, damn the consequences life motto that Shane runs with in that scene. Like, walk with me here. Of course, there's also the fact that when Shane calls Ilya an asshole, he's doing so from his appreciation of Ilya's defiance. He's defiant in the way in which he refuses to bow, to be corralled, or managed in any way. The image that he projects for the fans and analysts and fellow players and the league is someone who is always chirping, who doesn't know when to quit, whose image as a player cannot be properly managed because it would always hit you with the unexpected. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that after his famous "Who told you that? Liar told you that?" I said 50, followed by the wink, when the reporters bring up his claim that he had declared that he was going to score 40 goals in his rookie season, Shane's immediate reaction to seeing the interview was to chuckle as he calls him an asshole. And then moments later, when Shane shows up to have lunch with his parents, Yuna brings up the same interview, and Shane again affirms that Ilya is an asshole, which Yuna agrees with and follows it up with the "fuck Ilya Rosen of tirade," which Shane listens to, but he smiles. And we are meant to infer that his mind at that point is on Ilya being an asshole. And it is an interesting thing to consider when you recognize that this conversation is happening with Yuna, who is Shane's manager, someone whose role it is to manage Shane's image as the rule follower, the quintessential golden boy of the league, who is well mannered and well behaved, and whose entire persona has been crafted to be quite agreeable for various reasons, chief of which is tied to his identity as a person of color. But I will come to that in a bit. So, as I was saying, it's not a coincidence that Shane's Ilya is an asshole, followed by a fun smile, pops up in that moment because Shane is very much aware that Ilya Rozanov will never be a PG player. No one is looking at him as a role model because no one can manage quite well to get him to behave. And that is something that Shane admires and loves about him. Because for someone like him, like Shane, who is so tightly managed, Ilya, in the sense, is the breath of fresh air that gets to be himself and rebels against anyone attempting to pigeonhole him in some way. And that is something that Shane can relate to, or rather, something that Shane at his core does desire and want for himself. Now, before anyone thinks I am bashing Yuna, please know that I am not. I have already stated it quite clearly in my commodification of Shane Hollander video that I do think that she's doing the best she can and working with the hand that they have been dealt with in a predominantly white sport that she wants her son to succeed in, because Shane loves the sport to the point of fanaticism. But it doesn't take away the fact that Ilya's clear defiance is something that Shane gets to see and love and appreciate, even as he thinks a lot of those moves confirm just how much Ilya is an asshole. Then there's Ilya's nonconformism, his insistence on walking his own path, paving his own way, being the one who determines exactly who he is without having to fall into the expectation of what the league or the fans demand of him. And I know you're about to say, but come on, Noria, it is clear as day that Ilya is acting the way that is expected of him, as proven by the whole rivalry bit with Shane that the league pushed from the very start of their career. And to that, I will say yes and no. Do I think that Ilya sometimes exaggerates bits of his persona in order to fit the narrative that the league has pushed him into? Yes. But do I also think that it's merely an exaggeration of his persona as a player, not as a person? Also, yes. And this is confirmed even more so in The Long Game, which is the second all or none book for those who are not aware. Now, I am not going to go into book details as I don't want to spoil things for those who haven't read the book yet, but a consistent refrain from everyone who meets Ilya Rozanov and takes the time to learn more, to really know him, is the fact that they all realize that he really is a pretty decent guy who blows them away constantly by not being the absolute menace that they expect him to be. And that for me has always been the interesting bit, because on one hand, Ilya really is the decent friend, an amazing, brilliant partner that anyone can wish for, that Shane gets to have. But on the ice, he's still the menace, the terror that certain players know you should not push. You cannot constrain him, you cannot box him in. Ilya Rozanov is not the type of person that changes who he is at the core in order to please others. It's more a case of take me as I am in my entirety, because I'm not changing for shit or biting my tongue or minimizing who I am to please you. Except, of course, when it comes to his father, which is what always highlights the abuse he suffers so starkly. Because the only time Ilya is truly diminished in the first season is when he's in the presence of Grigory Rozanov. And I do think that it is quite the aspect of Ilya's persona that Shane gravitates towards, because it is something that Shane himself wants and can't fully express due to his lived in experience as a person of color in a predominantly white sport, where the expectations on him has always been one where he's expected to hold his tongue and be the model player, role model, and representation for those who look up to him. Because all of his life, all of this time is given to Oki, where he needs to swallow the microaggressions from being in the sport, where a GM can bring up his heritage as a Japanese Canadian player during his draft conversation, and he has to simply disassociate in the moment to interviews that ideally should have focused on the sport and the game he just played. And once again, they try to bring in his identity into the discourse. And in all of those moments, there Shane stands, biting his tongue, holding on to any displeasure that he might have let out otherwise, because it's against the very persona that has been crafted and is demanded of him so he can continue to maintain the model minority status that he holds. It is a burden that he bears. And so when he sees Ilya mouthing off, refusing to be boxed in to conform to what is expected of him, Shane enjoys that, even if Ilya is a bit of an asshole in those moments, which all comes down to the fact that with no restrictions, Ilya Rozanov, asshole that he is ultimately free. Free in a way that Shane desires for himself. This freedom to be expressive, to want, to desire, to not be encumbered by their world. Like, sure, Ilya is cocky and unrestrained, and everyone is so quick to write him off, believing that they know him and unable to see that he's so much more, and that his asshole behavior speaks to the nuances of his personhood. But Shane sees that, he respects that, he wants that, to be able to live as free as you can without giving a shit what anyone thinks about you or their reactions towards you, without having your very existence predicated on your good behavior. I think for Shane, there is something ultimately freeing about that. That is why in those moments when he's alone watching Ilya be, or when they are together alone, separate from the rest of the world, his muttered asshole is always so fun, something he delights in, something he gets to experience when he's with Ilya Rozanov, that bit of freedom. And it is part of the story for both Ilya, who craves Shane's boring ways, and Shane, who craves Ilya's asshole ways. Part of their trajectory and growth as characters is for them to end up imbibing elements that they like and love about the other person, not to a point where they are completely changed and no longer themselves, but where it becomes a meeting, a merger of sorts, whereby they get to both be versions of themselves that take on the element of the person that they love. Like it's beautiful. But of course, these are just my own thoughts. I would as always love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might possibly potentially be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Yes, Bridgerton video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.